What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 2 of my reviewing and ranking the 4 View from the Vault series shows that the Grateful Dead released about 20 years ago. This is volume 2, came out in 2001. It is a complete show from June 14th, 1991. I was at that show. Have very specific memories of that show, some good, some not. And then there's some filler from a 1990, July 12th, 1990 show. I wrote a book about that tour. Yeah, so it's a DVD release with a CD soundtrack. I'm going to review the CD soundtrack. I haven't really watched the DVD release. I did check it out to see if I could see myself. Couldn't. It's at RFK Stadium. We were not close to the stage. But it was, yeah. It was a rough, I very clear memories of this being the roughest show on tour. The parking lot scene was super aggro. There were cops everywhere. Shakedown Street did not happen because people were being busted left and right for selling merchandise, and not even illegal merchandise. I mean, technically illegal merchandise, but t-shirt sellers were being busted, soda sellers were being busted. The guy I toured with usually sold grilled cheeses. He didn't even try to set up because it was so aggro. We saw a couple fights break out in the crowd, in the parking lot. It was one of the tensest parking lot scenes I've ever experienced in scores upon scores of parking lot scenes, both with Dead and Fish. And nothing could rival this RFK 91 experience. It was pretty rough. Then we get to the show, and I just remember the first half of the first set was just not good. It just seemed to lack energy. Wasn't until midway through the first set, in the middle of a Road Jimmy of all things, where I was all of a sudden like, okay, they found the energy. And then the show finishes pretty strong and kind of redeems the entire day. But this is a 3 CD set. You get the complete show. The entire first set fits on disc 1. And it kind of bears out. I don't think it's as bad as my memory of it was. I think the day had just been so rough and hot and miserable and kind of unpleasant that I was looking for something better. They open up with a Cold Rain and Snow. I like the song. Nothing particularly special about it. We get a Wang Dang Doodle as the second song, which is interesting choice. We're not, usually I think Hell in a Bucket was a common Bob follower to Cold Rain and Snow. So we're kind of staying low key, but it's a nice song choice. And something I don't remember at the time but now it's like one of the highlights, when Hornsby comes forward with his first, Hornsby's in the band at this point. So this is the Welnick-Hornsby combination of the two of them. When Hornsby comes forward with his first piano solo in Wang Dang Doodle, it's like, yeah, Hornsby's got chops, man. Hornsby's got a jazz background. Hornsby can play. Just the first couple like chords that he drops in his solo, you're like, all right, this is a whole different vibe than anybody else who's ever played with the Dead as a full-time member, which I guess Hornsby was for this tour. But yeah, it was nice. Hornsby's nice. He later has some really good moments. I think it's in Franklin's Tower when you start to really feel the Hornsby love. And in Dark Star, you get a little bit of Hornsby. So yeah, the Hornsby thing was nice, but other than that, it's a solid Wang Dang Doodle. We get a Jack-a-Row, which even on the recording, I think sounds as kind of anemic and as I remember it being. And then we get a Big River, Maggie's Farm, and usually I'm a big fan of Maggie's Farm, but neither one of these really does anything. And I do think the first half, other than Hornsby's piano playing, I don't know, it is kind of rough. It does seem a little like the boys are just maybe, just not feeling it on this night. But then we get Road Jimmy. And when we get Jerry's second, the longer of the solos, and he kind of builds the energy right before we get to the last part where we drop into the funky part, you can kind of feel everything turn around. And the energy starts to feel a little stronger. Bob follows with a black-throated wind that's got some good energy. Then we get a Tennessee Jad, pretty straightforward Tennessee Jad, but Tennessee Jad I think always delivers. And then we close out with a nicely jammed out Jerry just pushing the ceiling as far as he can, just really going for those big climactic explosive moments. And the music never stopped. And I think the music never stopped almost makes up for the sins of the first half. And it's like, hey man, we can still play. We can still bring it. We can still deliver. We're setting you up really strong for a second set. And I think the music never stopped. It's like, okay, all right, that wasn't bad. And I remember at the time going, okay, they turned it around. What are they going to bring in the second set? And I kind of feel that listen. I'm like, yeah, first half is rough, but they turned it around by the end. Disc 2 is the second set all the way through space. So kind of, not kind of short. Not really. But what do we get before drums? I guess we get a good, we get a good long stretch before drums. So I take that back. Yeah, we get 25, 30, we get close to 50 minutes before we drop into drums. We get a Help Slip Franklin's. And the highlight, Help sounds great, Franklin sounds great, but the Slipknot is a jam. The Slipknot is out there. The Slipknot is like, we have untethered all the boats and we're all the spaceships and we're floating around and really aggressive, fun, not like spacey floating around space, but like anybody can zoom anywhere and attack at any time and just bring your best energy and drop all the MIDI samples you want to drop and just kind of go crazy, but keep that sort of Slipknot energy. Slipknot to me has always kind of sounded like white water rafting, but on like heavily recreational chemistry wise, psychedelics. Like to me, Slipknot always seems like white water rafting on psychedelics. Like there's definitely forward momentum, but you're also going back and forth and you're also going up and maybe going under and maybe going through some narrow valleys. And you're just all over the place. It's like any of those awesome whitewater rapid movies of like, when was that, the 90s, when all things would go wrong and things would happen. It's that, but it's like, there's danger, but it's adventurous, but it's definitely kind of trippy. And Jerry is just going full on. Welnick and Hornsby are just adding all kinds of eyebrows. Bob, of course, is teasing with the MIDI samples and dropping some crazy things. Phil's on crazy bass runs. Like the Slipknot of the Help Slip Franklins is what it's about. Help is great. Franklin's got some good uplifting Franklin energy, but I think the Franklin is more of like, okay, we made it. Let's have some dessert and just relax and maybe dance out the night. The wedding's over. The wedding is Slipknot. It's intense and there's a lot of rituals, but now we can kind of just celebrate in Franklin's Tower. Excellent. Whole thing's like 25 minutes. Excellent start to the second set. We then get an estimated profit, and we get some really nice playing in the estimated profit. And we get, I think Vince is on his keyboards where he's got like a sax sound that's going, like this very obviously synthetic saxophone sound. But what Vince is playing and the way he's playing and sort of the way he's just right there in the mix and just kind of not really dominating, but also not buried, but very present. Like Vince's contributions to this, it's a really nice touch. And yeah, the sax obviously sounds fake, but it's so obviously a MIDI sample or a synth sample that it doesn't come across as cheesy because they're not even trying to pass it as a sax, but that's kind of maybe what the sample says. I don't know. It's a really cool vibe, and it goes on for kind of a long time. And as we kind of reach the peak of the estimated jam, it's an estimated jam, so it's a pretty laid back, kind of intense, but not aggressively so affair. You feel like it's not going into Eyes of the World. You feel like it's kind of winding down into something else. And sure enough, it goes into a Dark Star. And it's a pretty good Dark Star. It's like a 12-minute Dark Star. It's enjoyable, but like it almost feels like some of the best jams I think the Dead have dropped in like the 80s and 90s are like pre-drums jams. Things that sort of evolve out of He's Gone, evolve out of Terrapin Station. In one fantastic instance in 94, there's a epic one that evolves out of an Eyes of the World. But you get these really weird, aggressive, almost metal, slightly chaotic, they arise or evolve out of a He's Gone or Terrapin, but don't really bear any relation to those songs. But they're great sort of jumping off points. That's kind of what this Dark Star feels like to me. It doesn't really feel like a Dark Star jam. It feels like they're jamming before drums, and that eventually drums are just going to take over, and drums will bring some semblance of order to the chaos that is reigning. And that's kind of what this Dark Star reminds me of. It's not out there enough to feel like a dark star. It doesn't go on long enough to feel like a dark star. There are some kind of beautiful moments in the beginning when they're flirting with it, but then they get kind of crazy and jammy at the end. And so it's fun. It's nice to hear. I don't think it would make anybody's top 10, maybe even top 20 Dark Star list. No, it wouldn't. But it's a nice treat. Goes into drums. We get a really nice space. And that ends set to disc two. Disc three opens up with Stella Blue, and there's about 3.5 to 4 minutes of space before we actually get into Stella Blue. And I think that is a wise choice on their part to include like about a third of space, the total of it, before you get to Stella Blue, because Stella Blue is just seems like it's imbued with that spaciness, and that spaciness sort of lends itself really well to Jerry's sort of delivery of this, to the solo that comes afterwards, to just the Stella Blue ambience. I think really is helped by getting the solid dose of what is a fun sounding space, but also kind of an emotional sounding space. But it leads really well into Stella Blue, and then Bob drops us a Turn On Your Love Light. We get a little fake ending at the end. They go back and jam it again. Really nice, fun Turn On Your Love Light, but kind of short, pretty much 2 songs, a Stella Love Light coming out of space. So interesting. And then we get in It's All Over Now, Baby Blue is your encore, which is fun to hear, but I can't say it's a solid song. I don't know if it's one of the best versions of this. But yeah, it's interesting. Really solid pre-drums, just absolutely solid. Stella Blue is solid. I don't think the Dark Star is the highlight. I think the Slipknot. I think if I had to rank the songs on this, the Slipknot, maybe even the Music Never Stopped, just because of the energy of that. Nah, the Dark Star is better than the music. But definitely that Slipknot, I think, is the thing to hear. And the Help Slip Franklins as a whole is a really good listen. But then you got the problem of the bonus tracks. And the reason it's a problem is because once again, we have an instance in which the bonus tracks might be better than the entirety of the actually released show. You get 3 songs from July 12th, 1990. This was also at RFK, right? Yeah, this was also at RFK. Dropping Dark Star at RFK two summer tours in a row. We get the beginning of the second set, which I think this is the beginning. Opens with a Victim of the Crime. Fantastic Victim of the Crime. Muscular. They've got it. Those ascending runs Jerry does, where he's like, when he builds up that energy. The jam afterwards doesn't go on for too long, but it stays pretty cohesive, pretty intense, pretty dark. One of their best live songs. Like, there were so many grumblings in the late 80s when this song started to pop up regularly. People who didn't like the dark energy. I'm like, the Dead are full of dark energy. What are you talking about? This one just like musically matches it, like in a more overt sense. That goes into A Foolish Heart. I think one of the most underappreciated live songs of late era Dead. Love Foolish Heart. Love the little solo in the middle. Love the way the jam happens afterwards. There were a lot of Victim Foolish or Foolish Victims in this era. I think Victim leading into Foolish kind of always worked better because a little of that dark energy seemed to seep over a little bit into Foolish Heart, and I think that helps Foolish Heart. Neither one of these I would put on the top of the all-time Victim or Foolish Heart list, but they're both really good. They're really solid, well played, good songs. And then we get a Dark Star. And we get a Dark Star. We get a 1990 25-minute Dark Star. We get both verses. We get crazy jams. We get Midland sounds fantastic. Like, we're talking, this is like, Brent is still in the band at this point. He sounds absolutely amazing in his Dark Star support. It is out there. It takes its time. It gets crazy. Does seem to tread water a little bit before they go into the second verse, right around the 17, 18 minute mark. There's a little sort of like, all right, maybe we're a little lost. Hey, let's hit that second verse. But they hit the second verse. After that, we get some more jam in before things kind of fade off into what sounds like it's going to be drums. But yeah, this is a dark star, man. This is what you want out of a dark star. You want them to take their time. You want them to be patient. You want that big, gigantic roar from the crowd when it happens, which just kind of inspires the next 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, I'm not sure this dark star would make anybody's top 10 list unless you were there and maybe you're like, maybe. Because I think of the dark stars I saw in my time, this is might be my favorite, though I was at that one in the Halloween shows when after Bill Graham died, I think Ken Kesey came out and did this crazy rant, and then they went on this the Buffalo Bills speech, and then they went off in this awesome chaotic jam. That moment might be my favorite, but musically, I think this is probably a better Dark Star. This is a pretty good Dark Star. But yeah, it's really good bonus material. Really good bonus material. So yeah, it's a solid show. Like I think it's a much more solid show than Volume One, which was also from the same tour that the bonus stuff is on. It was from the '90 tour. I think a couple shows earlier, if I'm not mistaken. But ranking those two, if I had to rank them, I think I would put. They both have a Wang Dang Doodle, which is interesting. And the highlights of each are probably the bonus tracks. But yeah, of these two, I think two is the better of one. I'm not going to put the list on the screen, but I think View from the Vault 2 is better than View from the Vault 1, mainly because the second set is pretty ridiculous. Even though we only get the Stella Blue Turn on Your Love Light after Space, they're both really good performances of the songs. And It's All Over Now, Baby Blue is at least a fun song. And I think in the previous show, we got a Knockin' on Heaven's Door, which I just can't support. Just can't get behind that. Love the song, but not a cover of it. But yeah, that's what I would do. I would say Volume 1 has things that are better in the first set. I think the Jackaroo is better in that show than it is in this one. The Road Jimmy is better in 2 than it is in 1. Let It Grow, probably better than Music Never Stopped. But then you get to the second set. I think the second set with that Help Slip and even that Slipknot is so good. It's not a big difference between the two, but if I had to rank them, and this will be the last time I don't make a list, next time I'll actually put a list up, I would put Volume 2 slightly above Volume 1. But it's mainly because of the bonus material, because of that Victim, Foolish, Dark Star, which is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's what I would rank them. I would put 2 above 1. Yeah, all right, that's all I got. Those are my thoughts on this. It was fun to revisit this. Haven't listened to this in a couple years. Going to tackle 3, going to tackle 4, and then we'll move on to Other Dead. If you have something you want me to address, I do take requests, man. So I might honor it. I might. Don't take all of them, but I'll listen. But anyways, yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share. Let me know your thoughts on this show if you've watched or listened to it or any of those things. And thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.